Today on the Idiot's Guide, we're going to be kicking off our Man I Love Fireworks 2024. Is patriotism dead? So we have a major company that's allowing employees to fly their flag of whatever ideology or whatever they want, basically their flag of choice, but only allows the Stars and Stripes to be flown on national holidays. What has our nation come to? I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka the Prophet Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. All right, Joe. One of the things I'm curious about is I think we've mixed up the definition of patriotism. And so right off the bat, I really want to kind of unpack this by just reading what I found as far as the definition of patriotism. Looking up on Wikipedia was kind of like just a little bit of, obviously Wikipedia is like the most trusted source of information out there on earth.
It is.
Besides Google. Google is the number one because it'll lead you to things like Reddit, Quora, Wikipedia. Honestly, I know that if I'm writing some college paper, I'm guaranteed to have some sort of problem if I cite Wikipedia as it. But
you don't cite Wikipedia; you cite the sites on Wikipedia.
That's true.
I think we have this conversation many times.
Cite the sites of the sites that are cited. Okay. Anyway. So patriotism, just by definition, this is what comes on the website. It's patriotism is the feeling of love, devotion, and a sense of attachment to a country or state. This attachment can be a combination of different feelings for things such as the language of one's homeland, its ethnic, cultural, political, or historical aspects. Generally speaking, when you like where you live, and you're proud of it and you want to share that, with other, you want to, everybody agrees. You're like, yay, us,
Yeah, I think we talk about, who are the Patriots. So we know, I'm not talking about the football team.
I hate
when we talk about
Deflategate.
who true patriots are, the military is the biggest, what stands out to that.
Okay.
And so if you were to put this in a military perspective, patriotism is the feeling of love, devotion, and a sense of attachment to a country or state. That's why military people serve.
Yeah.
Is because they have a feeling of love and devotion to their country. And so, yeah, I think this is a good definition of patriotism.
I think one of the things to mention in that definition is that it says a country, not our country, not my country, not the United States. Only the U.S. is, it's exclusive to that. And I think that that's a misconception. People are like, oh, when you're a patriot, you must be talking about America, and that's wrong.
It is. A lot of different countries are patriotic toward their nation. I'm a huge fan of soccer.
No, we play football.
So,
I believe you call it soccer.
In the U.S., it's gaining momentum, but throughout the world, soccer's been a huge sport for many, many, many generations.
Except everywhere else, they don't call it soccer. They call it soccer.
Yeah,
in the
it's
US.
football.
I don't know why they don't call it what it is, but only because we have football.
Interestingly, so outside of the U.S., it used to be called soccer. And then when the U.S. adopted it as soccer, then slowly the other nations in the world stopped calling it soccer. That may be a podcast for the future.
That's really weird.
Yeah.
But okay.
But yeah, it used to be called soccer.
Whatever the U.S. does, they just screw everything up. So we're just going
to... But you have the national teams. You have, when they describe a player, even in a local team, because we have teams that come in from, or players that come in from all over the world.
Yeah.
They talk about where they come from. And there is a lot of devotion in these players to their nation. They may be playing here in the U.S. and they may be on a U.S.-based team, but they take pride when they go and play for their national team. And even so, I follow the feeds on MLS here. And when they talk about any of the players from our local team that get called up to a national team, the thumbnail that they put on the article shows the player with their flag.
Really?
Yep. So when it's a U.S. player called up to the U.S. team, they've got the U.S. flag draped over their shoulders. If it's, say, an Irish
You said the MLS?
MLS, Major League Soccer.
Oh, I thought MLS was like Major League. Oh, MLB.
Yeah, that's baseball.
Yeah, I was like, wait. But I thought our team is the Real, and
Yeah.
that's like I thought that was a Major League team.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, so you.
But we recruit from all over the world.
Yeah, we recruit from all over the world. So you've got the
that's fair,
MLS,
okay.
which is the league that we play in here in North America, because Canada's part of our league. And then we've got national teams. So we have the U.S. men's national team, the U.S. women's national team. And so they will pick players from all over the world, because we have some U.S. citizens that are playing for, say, in England or in South America or wherever. And so they will get called up to the U.S. national team. And so when our players get called up to a national team, whether it's the U.S. national team or their home country's national team,
Yeah.
that's what they do, is they show them with their flag. And that's patriotism. That's a love for country.
Well, and I think a good way to look at that definition is this kind of like a family. Okay, a family doesn't necessarily designate like, well, you came from mommy and daddy. You know, like that's obviously you have this like nuclear definition that's like that, but ultimately it doesn't. There's so many variations to that form what is that kind of family, and from being, let's say for example, like you are an advocate and are currently an adopting parent.
Yeah.
Okay. And in that process, you are bringing and growing your family the same as other people grow their family. You have this group together. You love each other like that core. Imagine that in patriotism, that concept is just blown into the size of your country and or state. It doesn't necessarily mean, specifically just the country boundaries, but your state. Like we're here in Utah, and we have pride for our state in the aspects of this as well. And I think it kind of gets lost in that definition, but kind of breaking it all the way down to the fact of like, hey, you're part of the family. So it loses all of this potential divisiveness basically in the process.
It does, because when you think about family, so my daughters are adopted, and we've talked about it on this podcast before. My ancestry goes back to English royalty, and so my daughters, even though they're adopted into the family, we talk about your definition, historical aspects, ethnic, cultural, political background. I think my, ancestry fits all of those aspects, and I'm very proud of my ancestry. Mm-hmm. But my daughters, even though they're not biologically related to that, they are heirs to that family history. Yeah. And they hopefully take pride in that. I mean, they're still teenagers, so probably not. But there's an aspect of there is that history that they now have as part of their family. One thing that a lot of people don't talk about in the Roman Empire. So it's after the Roman Republic. So Julius Caesar was the first Roman emperor. Well, kind of. But his successor was not his direct descendant. It was I think it was a nephew from a marriage. And so it was someone that he was very close to and mentored. But that was the tradition in Roman rule, is that it was not a direct descendancy inheritance. Okay. It was they adopted an heir. And so it may be a biological child that they adopted as an heir, but it was always an adopted heir.
Interesting.
And so, and again, I think, when we're talking about patriotism, Romans, I think, also displayed very much a love of their country, and they were very patriotic. And
yeah.
This idea of adoption it's not just, the insular idea of family or patriotism. It's the idea that you love the family or your country and its history. even its bad history,
Yeah.
you still honor it and hopefully improve on it as each generation goes along.
Yeah. So I think one of the just kind of an interesting note is that when I looked up the Wikipedia definition of this, and I knew this in essence, like talking about different political parties, but it was funny that in there, categorically, it was just on there listed as a political ideology. And so you're literally thinking like, wait a sec. Now that just means like I could be, patriot. I could be a patriot or patriotic, or I don't know. You're like patriotism, and but you don't call it republicanism or democraticism or dem yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, right? Like, so why did this one become an ideology where you think of like democracyism or nationalism is an ideology? I I, I think what's hard is like that removes the thought of that being what it should be. But I think having like I guess I don't like the word ideology. I think that's where I run into the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it carries some connotations with it. So there's when we're looking at any given word, there's the denotation, which was when I was in school, the way the teacher taught me to remember the difference between denotation and connotation was denotation is the dictionary definition. And so we're looking at, the denotation of patriotism here. But then there's a connotation with it, which is the way that people take the word.
I think that's what I'm struggling with is
Yeah.
the connotation, and not necessarily. I just believe that some people may look at that and think, if I say that I'm being patriotic or I believe in patriotism, that I believe in some political party, and that's not necessarily the truth. That just I believe in being patriotic, I guess,
Yeah.
more than it's like patriotism as some sort of faction in my society, and like the challenge that I run into with it is, thinking about, you know, putting up a flag, okay? And that ideology behind that and going like, when a company permits you to wave whatever flag you wish, whatever you believe in, however that is, whether that's, I would almost push back and go, well, what about, like I'm a practicing churchgoer, okay? And what if my church has a flag and I wave that around? If I'm in a company, like that would be my question is that included in what your statement says? Because I have a feeling it isn't, because it alludes to something like a patriotism ideology.
I mean, and I can see that, but I also think that where you come from it is that fear position that we don't know whether this company would allow that or not. But your instinct says they wouldn't because there's a lot of this pushback against anything that is, the traditional Christian values.
Right.
And so I would hope that this company wouldn't. But I mean, we can't say one way or another. But I think that's where that comes from is that there is so much connotation applied
Yeah.
to those values, to traditional Christian values, which in and of themselves are not bad. They're good values.
Yeah.
Be faithful, be basically a good person. That's what Christianity's all about. Give charity, be charitable.
But
I mean, they're good values.
I think one of the things is not really to like, rabbit trail onto a religious representation, but to say like, okay, well then it's more the consideration of that, when the sense of saying a company is saying you can fly all of these ideals or whatever your belief is, but when you're talking about the stars and stripes, now we're going to limit that to Tuesdays and certain national holidays. It's like, whoa, like that's an everyday thing. Like it should be, everywhere, capital-wise state buildings, all those sorts of things always are going to have a representation of our flag. So that's not necessarily like, saying that but this is just a place of business. Yes, they can make their own rules, but I think letting the employees, wave one and not the other is a little a little, to me, insulting, but the idea is, okay, so, flags, this is from Drexel.com. It says the flag has been used to display our nationalism as well as our rebellion and everything else in between. And I think that that's a good way of looking at it. Is it's like all of these other things are statements about what we believe in. Okay. Sometimes those statements are truth in like all of them are truth in our own way, but what we strongly believe in, like these things that we feel passionate about, and we're waving that banner as that representation. And the US has such a deep and rich history that flag is representing constantly, even to the point of saying, because of that flag, you can wave your flag. Like it doesn't matter. Like,
And that's the thing. I mean, the U.S. flag should represent freedom. That's what it has always represented.
right.
The U.S. flag is about our rebellion from oppression. The people, our forefounders, came to this nation to be able to have freedom, to be able to exercise their own rights.
Yeah.
And we rebelled against England so that we would have our own rights here, that we would have representation, that we would have all of these values that we hold dear as citizens of this nation. That's what our flag represents.
And prior to the flying of this, I think it was like 1783 by the time that this was original, like officially flown as our United States flag, or United Colonies essentially. But you have the red and white stripes, each one totaling 13 stripes. And then that's to represent the 13 colonies. And then you also have the constellation, the circle, that was 13 stars. There's also different versions of this that are out there before it even was flown. And before that was flown, each one of the colonies had a flag, had a banner, had something that represented that area, or that eventually a state.
Yeah.
But they and every state still has some kind of a state flag similar to the colonies, but we all have one that it stands under.
Yep.
And that I think is kind of the lost concept in this, is to go like, no. Like, you can have all of those things, but there's a unifying principle that we don't want to lose.
Yeah. We
know?
are the United States
Yeah.
of America. We are a united country. And that's what the flag is supposed to represent. We all have different ideologies. We all have different viewpoints. And the state flags fly with the U.S. flag.
Yeah.
So if you look at any state capital, we have the United States flag that flies next to and slightly above the state flags. And that's because even as a citizen of an individual state, we have patriotism toward our state.
Yeah.
And then we have patriotism for our country. And they fly in tandem. These ideologies that people have, those should fly in tandem with the U.S. flag. Because the U.S. flag gives us the freedom to display those flags.
Yeah. I think that, sometimes it can get inflamed, or it can get a little bothersome when someone, one of our government leaders turns around and places something in front of, essentially. When I don't mind acknowledgement, like that's okay. To each their own. You're welcome to do so, but it literally goes on. If you put something in front of the thing that has flown at Iwo Jima, when it's getting put up there for the troops that are there trying to, World War II.
Yeah.
You're talking about soldiers who have just some unbelievable intense feeling about that, and you think anything should be in front of it. Like, first and foremost, don't ever challenge that. I would never challenge that, but it's so difficult to just like feel like I have to be quiet about that because it's offensive. If I say like, no, that pisses me off, because it does. It makes me angry if somebody's like, this is more important than that. I'm like, no, because I went over there. I fought no, not World War II, or not even Vietnam, but I went over to combat. I fought in war for a reason, not because because I knew you or knew anyone else. It was because I knew that I wanted my family to stay safe here. And my family is you and anyone else. So, and I did it because, and I wore that flag on my sleeve when I did so.
Yeah, and I don't think this is any different. So we talked about state flags. There are family crests that people honor as well.
Yeah.
We put all of these things out there as a symbol of who we are and what we stand for. We talk about the LGBTQ flags. We talk about the Black Lives Matter flags. We talk about even a Christian flag. I don't know if one. I think Baptists have a flag.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Lutheran, they have
Yeah.
a banner, like flag type thing.
Being able to fly all of those is the right of every American.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the U.S. flag should fly with it. Anytime we see a Black Lives Matter flag, we should see a U.S. flag because that's what the U.S. flag represents. Anytime we see an LGBTQ flag, we should see the U.S. flag because the U.S. flag is what that represents.
Yeah.
Freedom to be who we are. Freedom as a nation to come together as one, no matter our backgrounds, no matter whatever, different color skin, different religious ideologies, different sexual preferences, whatever it is. It's standing behind that flag because that flag stands for freedom.
Yeah.
And along with that, I think there's been a lot of theft of that representation.
Yeah.
I know we'll get to that, but
Well, I think one of the things is to go, well, like how you treat the flag, what you do. This conversation about like what you should and shouldn't do as far as where the flags are posted. Don't put something over and above the U.S. flag, and that's part of the U.S. flag code. That's what that is. You can Google search U.S. flag code, and it shows up. And I like by definition, there's a couple other things. You talk about military. We were having the conversation that in the U.S. Department of Defense Customs and Courtesies, it's a long manual for if you really really need to fall asleep, read it, and it'll put you to sleep before you even get to this point. But it says, I mean, you should show the same respect for national anthems for foreign countries as you do for your own. When I'm in the military, and the national anthem is posted, and now recently they actually just passed this new part of this DoD is that because I'm prior service, I don't have to be in uniform to render a salute. So. That was within the last couple years that basically they just said, if you have any background of military service that you are in, not like, well, my dad was, but meaning you served in any armed forces and you're at an event like a baseball game and they're playing the national anthem, you have you have the right to salute. Why? Because you served in that capacity. And that's, I think, a really great gesture and symbol of identifying, those who served greater than just, like, welcome to the family here.
Right.
And I don't want to degrade that. That's still part of patriotism. Right. But the other ones who said over and above, I will lay my life if it's necessary.
Yeah. And again, going back to the idea of military personnel being the epitome of patriotism.
Yeah.
Here in the flag code, the U.S. flag code, we show other nations, other allied nations, the same respect as we show our own flag and national anthem.
Yeah.
And so that's what patriotism is showing respect. I mean, and this is the highest level of the respect, saluting and giving honor to a foreign national flag and anthem. That is the highest level of respect that you can show to someone else. That's what patriotism is all about. It's not selfish.
Yeah.
It's not selfish at all. Patriotism is the opposite of selfish. It's about showing respect.
So patriotism sounds an awful lot like Patreon.
Oh, that's a horrible transition. Are we back to these horrible transitions again?
Oh, they'll stay. Okay. It's never got. They never left. So. But I heard we have one. Do we have Patreon?
Yes, we do have a Patreon now. So any of you watching, you can go to our Patreon. So if you go to Patreon, search us up. It's under The Idiot's Guide and Hot Potato Finance. or Patreon.com/TIG_HFP. I know I chose the most confusing series of letters to be able to put that together.
You know what's even easier? Linked below. That's easier.
Yes. But we've got a lot of ways to support us from the lowest tier, our Spud tier, for just $1 a month, upwards to if you want to be a superstar and join our Mash Tater tier, which is $100 a month. That gets you a lot of extras behind the scenes, some merch, a lot of great stuff on there. Join our Patreon. It really helps support this. It helps us to be able to build and grow this. You can see we're in our new studio here. So this is a great opportunity to be able to grow with us, help build the channel, and be able to listen to us talk a whole lot more.
Yes. So I think for the last subject here, we can fly through this pretty quickly, but mainly because of the fact that I'm almost scared to mention this. It's a little bit of a hot topic. I'm just going to say it.
Okay.
Nazis were just being patriots.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
I mean, I'm not justifying anything that they did.
No.
It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah. The idea behind that is patriotism can be good. Patriotism can also be very, very bad.
Now, I can even go as far as to say, like, Nazis, like, you listen to, like, Russia and Putin and his comments about Nazis thriving in certain, areas and compounds of Ukraine. And that's part of his justification for things, is he's trying to denazify certain areas and territories. And sure, like, you can... whatever.
Yeah.
It's not my conflict, not my fight. Like, I think it's terrible no matter what. But what we're talking about is some of the symbolism of, the atrocities and things like that. I don't think everybody there was, completely on board with like, yes, do this to all the Jewish people, or anybody else that they were doing in
Yeah.
what do they call that? Eugenics, kind of modeling, but terrible stuff. But,
There was a great line in Captain America, The First Avenger, which is the first movie, where the Dr. Erskine, the scientist, says, what most people don't realize is that the first country that Hitler conquered was Germany.
Before that, Germany.
And that's a scary thing because he turned patriotism into something horrible. One man who was very good at speaking, he was very, what's the word? Charismatic.
yeah, influential.
He was able to convince an entire group of people, and not everyone in Germany was pro-Nazi. There was a lot of underground people who fought against it, but he turned patriotism into something horrible.
I think the sad thing, this is just kind of a communication principle, is to say, like, if you want to learn how to be an excellent communicator, like, study the nightmare people that have caused some of the worst destruction on Earth.
Oh, yeah.
And only because they are some of the most powerful and influential speakers on Earth.
They got there because they were charismatic, because they were good speakers, because of all that. Not because their ideals were good. They were horrible. They got there because they were able to convince people to change their views of what is good and wrong in the mind of patriotism.
And I think, taking that really does remove the integrity that patriotism had. And I like part of that, you're stealing away from that. Like you said earlier, stealing valor, talking about just what they used as their banner, the swastika. Okay. And what it meant before. And then now you think, well, I mean, if any image of that now, and it's just, you're holding like it's like it's a vampire, and you're like, this is terrible. You should be, hauled off to prison for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And you're like, hold on.
In today's world, the swastika is seen, at least in the West, still some areas in the Southern Asian countries still use it because it was very, very much a part of their culture. But the swastika is seen as a symbol of evil.
Right.
And it was the Nazis that turned it that way. So what most people don't realize is that the swastika comes from Sanskrit, and it meant conducive to well-being. And even in the United States, it was a symbol of many Native American cultures. One specifically was the Navajo Nation, was that the swastika was a symbol of their nation.
Yeah.
To the point that in Arizona, pre-World War II or pre-Nazi Germany, it was actually on state highway signs. So there was an arrowhead, so an upside-down arrowhead with a swastika in the middle of it as a representation of the Native American tribes there. And it was stolen. That symbol, which meant such good stuff, was stolen to become evil, essentially by one man.
I think what's interesting, and I'm not going to make this comparison without deeply disqualifying it in any equal measure of that kind of distortion. Okay. But to say that, the ideologies have been emphasized so much that our American flag becomes questionable on a daily basis, is venturing into a territory where you can steal the ideal of that and say you're stealing that valor that represents more than this. It doesn't, the American flag doesn't represent racism. It doesn't represent, because I wave it, I'm going to be this particular party. I'm going to believe this particular way. No, I'm an American. I'm part of the United States. I'm a U.S. citizen. And I know that as a symbol outside of the U.S., people come here because of that symbol. Mm-hmm. And for it to just become this thing where to the side they just brush it off the table at a business meeting and they go, but everything else can be included, you're now placing that above the greatest representation of one of the greatest countries in the world.
And it is. And I think we are allowing the valor of the United States flag to be stolen by these groups who are, there's I mentioned Black Lives Matter earlier, and there is a big fear among the Black community when they see the United States flag.
Yeah.
By many, I'm not going to say all. But that's because the groups that have come after them that are actively racist are waving the flag, the United States flag. They are stealing the representation of what that flag represents. They're stealing its valor and turning it into something horrible.
And I think what's hard is I'm mad at both sides.
Yeah, and because
you have a reaction to it that you're going like, man, I want to do something about it, but on the flip side, I can't. And I believe in certain levels of protecting society and certain things. If you feel like causing harm to people is appropriate, don't do it under the banner of the U.S. flag. Don't ever. That's abusing that symbol. And then on the other side of it is to go like, they're waving this. They must be the representation of our nation. And I'm like, no, not at all. They don't represent me whatsoever. They step on my lawn, I will escort them off. That's.
And you won't be gentle about it. But that's the thing is, we as a nation we as a people are allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is not allow them to steal the valor of our flag. We have to take it back and let the U.S. flag stand for what it is meant to stand for, that of freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom from racism, freedom from prosecution, freedom from persecution, freedom from all of these negatives. Because that flag means we can be who we want to be.
Yeah.
And by allowing these groups to do that and giving into them means, and I'm not talking about the groups that are being persecuted. I'm talking about the groups that are using the flag for their negativity. By allowing them to steal the flag that way is giving into them and allowing them to steal its valor. And we need to stand up and say, no, this flag represents freedom to be who we are.
Yeah.
And whatever that is.
You know, I think just as kind of a wrap up is to think about this is how do we bring this back to the symbol that it's meant to be? How do we change the course, turn it around? I don't think it's completely off course and gone backwards, but it definitely has taken the long road, you know, and you're like, okay, let's take it off the detour, get it back on the main track and say like, can we revive this to say, when I say patriotism, I don't mean that to be offensive or that I'm racist, or I'm divisive or that I don't believe in you. It's the matter that I believe in my country. I believe in the people. I believe in the values of that, of what that represents. And that is that, we are united. We are united to believe in one another. And I think we've lost track of that. Just simply saying like, hey man, like you do you, I'm going to do me. And we're good. I'm fine with that. It's when I say I'm going to do me and you do you and that offends you. That's where I'm going to be like, all right, bro, you're taking away and stealing that valor. So let's get back on track and allow each other and love each other in that process of being more like a family.
That's it. We need to treat each other like a family again. Families don't always get along.
Right.
But we still love each other. And that's the end story. We don't have to always get along. But
So
as a
and cuddly.
nation, we need to love each other. Show that love, express that love, and let the United States flag be a symbol of that love and not let it be taken.
What is it? Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers got a hug.
Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug.
There you go.
All right. So we've reached the end of our show. And, I want to say thank you for listening today. Thank you for checking us out. Last couple parting words for me as life's too short. So keep laughing and keep learning. And remember, idiots have way more fun.
Check your shoes.